Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, back with the patch 13.5 rundown.
Subject to change.
For those who haven't figured out that means this is the 5th patch of set 13. Now, one change to note here to the patch rundown, just because there's been some confusion in the past at the bottom here. Always a reminder, this has always been true, but I just want to remind you that these are subject to change. If we find there's a bug or something changes after this rundown, it is possible they change. Make sure you check the official patch notes. The official patch notes are the real source. That is important. Check those. So,
louder.
That being said, the meta has been in an interesting spot in the sense that it is balanced, but it's also, we're seeing the pace of combat be a little too quick, and we are starting to see a few comps take the lead over another. And the thing with TFT is it really is a game of margins, where it's like if something is 1 or even 2% better, it's going to be played a lot more. And so, while there are a decent number of changes in here, they're pretty small. But again, trying to swing things back, a little less fast combat, and a little less on those overly played comps. So let's dive right in and talk about what's happening.
I'm surprised that he says that combat's too fast, because I feel like with Scrap, I guess it's like there are other comps that are ending it really fast, like ambushers, but Vernata and Scrap have a bunch of shields. It's not like the combat's going fast for that one, but I'm curious what he says.
On the encounter side, it's time to shift some of the encounters. I think there are some that are more popular than others, some that are less popular than others, some that we could take a break from. We're not getting rid of any.
Warwick.
So it's still definitely possible to see every encounter that you're used to playing with, just shifting some of the parameters. So Caitlyn, which gives extra gold, Heimerdinger, which is prismatic first, Powder, which is the wind-up monkey, and Savika, which is loot subscription, are going up. But Mel and Warwick are going down.
Yes.
Now, for those of you mathematicians here, that this doesn't add up to 100%, you're absolutely right. There's some cleanup to do here because it's like 103% now is the total. But all that actually means is instead of 8%, it's like 7.9%. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But the TLDR here is Caitlyn, Heimer, Powder, Savika up, Mel, Warwick down. So you'll see less Warwicks, less Mels. Cool.
Great.
And then Augments. You might remember this patch note from the last rundown. Unfortunately, it didn't quite make it into the branch cut, so it didn't actually go out last patch. But this time, for real, it does. And this is that augments that require a certain breakpoint of traits to appear will require more units in that trait to appear on 4-2. So again, this is mostly about like if you're only playing 2 Sentinel, seeing Sentinel emblem on 4-2 feels pretty bad. You're probably not taking it. So we're going to have that be a little less often. So, and this time for real, it's shipping. So,
yeah. I was lied to before.
All right, on the trait side, Dominator has definitely fallen out of favor. Part of it is the pace of combat being so fast, it really doesn't have time to ramp up. Part of it being that it's just kind of hard to stay alive. So we're just going to give it, again, small nudge here. Lots of small nudges you're going to see. Is that Dominator is going to be able to have 50 more health at 4 and 100 more health at 6. Help them stay alive a little bit. So didn't want to swing too hard with all the other changes, but small buff. Enforcer. Right now, Enforcer is like okay at 6. Not great. Like 4 and 6, not really that good. And 8, very, very good, especially if you get a Caitlyn 2. So we're shifting that power a little bit so you don't have to be quite as vertical. Okay. So a little more health for 4 and 6. And again, you can look at these numbers. They're tiny, tiny, tiny changes. And 8 will get a little bit less damage amp. Again, part of this is slowing down the pace of combat.
Tiny changes. Well, that's interesting. More given the subject headline of this slide.
This combined with some other changes should put 8 Enforcer in a better spot. All right, Emissary. Emissary is another one that's fallen out of favor. Again, survivability, 50 more health for those 4 emissaries. Cool. Experiment Emblem. This emblem is still overperforming quite a bit now that people have figured out how to play it. It has fallen out of favor a little bit, so I don't know. This change might be a little rough, but really. Especially the emblem on 2-1 is very, very good.
Not really.
So the clone HP is going down from 50% to 40%. Pit Fighter. Pit Fighter is another one that just hasn't, it's been below the bar. It's been like B tier. So 6 Pit Fighter is going to get more heal. And then 6 Pit Fighter is also getting more true damage. And so is 8 Pit Fighter.
Oh, wow.
So 6 and 8 Pit Fighter, small buff. Rebel. Rebel's another one that's sitting there at like low B tier, kind of struggling a bit. So it's going to, at all levels, 3, 5, and 7, you're going to get a little bit more base health so that Rebel should be more playable. And then Visionary. Visionary 6, it's, again, tiny nerf here. 5% less mana regen. Nothing crazy. And if there's any traits you're not seeing here, things like Sorcerer, stuff like that, remember there are changes coming to champions. We don't want to like double nerf things like that. So again, lots of changes, but lots of small changes here to the trait side.
Yeah. Lots of small changes in parentheses large. So the Dominators buff here is actually pretty on point, because the reason why Dominators suck is because it feels like Mundo and Blitz don't do a lot. And so this actually makes it so it feels like they'll actually tank a little bit more. Also, this might incentivize you to use Dominator Emblem a little bit more on Frontliner, so that way you get a little bit more extra shield, and that can be pretty valuable. So I think it's a smart buff, as opposed to like you don't want their damage or anything else. Don't buff the unit. So I think this makes sense. Enforcers, I actually like this change. I didn't realize this was happening, but they're buffing 4 and 6 Enforcers, so it feels like it's not so all or nothing of hitting 8. Otherwise, you're kind of like sitting duck. You still can play 6 Enforcer flex. I've shown it a couple times on my climb to Challenger for EU West. You can definitely play 6 Enforcer and flex around the traits, but it's noticeably worse. So this should give a little bit extra versatility to it. The HP shield is nice. Like, these are all just things that are just nice to have. So I like that direction. I don't know if these numbers are big enough to make it that impactful, but you never know, right? Enforcers is a snowball comp. The quicker you're able to get the kill, the more you're able to snowball the comp. So HP shield, hard to say. Emissary buff this is a buff to certain comps, like 4 sorcerer emissary. So even if they nerf 6 sorcerers or not, but this actually might buff that. And then 4 emissaries in general just might be better. And this also helps some of the other comps that are dependent on reroll. So reroll Tristana. I know Vlad, for example, the new hero Augment, likes to play around 4 emissaries. This actually buffs all those comps. And emissary in general is just like a little bit. And the problem with emissary is that you kind of have very specific things that you need to set up. You need all 4 of the specific emissaries, and the payoff for them is not nearly as good unless you hit like Garen 2. And so they're just making it better, which I think is good. Experiment Emblem is still very OP, and it's just a good nerf. So, but once again, they're nerfing Twitch, which is really funny because everyone's like, oh my god, like Twitch is not even the threat, but they keep nerfing him. So it's funny that like Experiment Emblem is very good. Twitch does not need to get nerfed. So it's funny that it happened again. 2 patches in a row. Pit Fighter, this one makes sense. Pit Fighter, who's excited about Pit Fighter? I think true damage buffing is in general always a little bit sketch, because I always think true damage when it gets out of control is very unfun. But no one's really out here like thinking Pit Fighter is awesome. I do think that this is a sizable buff though, because the healing for Pit Fighter is what's really important, because you need to keep Vi and you need to keep Vi alive for the most part, and Savika. So I think this is actually a pretty significant buff. He says it's a tiny buff. I think this is a pretty significant buff, but we'll see. Rebels, this one's actually kind of out of nowhere. I didn't expect them to actually buff Rebel HP. Not sure what to think about that. Rebels are actually fine. It's just that they're very conditional, but this might make it that Rebel is just a lot better now. That HP increase is really huge for something like Alawi, because as you guys know, when you play Rebel, one of the problems is you're stuck on like 1-star Alawi. Because if you play Rebels and you're just stuck on Alawi 1, you're just like hating your life. This also actually buffs the Academy line, because if you enter hitting Alawi 2 and you're playing 4/6 Sentinel with Academy, this also makes Alawi better. And because this is just the base HP for every Rebel breakpoint, not just 3/7, not just 7, but also in 3 and 5. And so this actually is a pretty big deal. This actually buffs Alawi a lot, the more I think about it. 3% extra HP to allow Alawi to basically cast again, or maybe get some more value off of stuff, is a really big deal. The more I think about it, the more I think this actually might be a high impact. And then Visionary, I mean, I think if you haven't caught on by now, 6 Visionary is very good. If you look at the TFT Academy website, you might notice that we've actually added a lot of comps, and they all have this this little teardrop icon below them. 6 Visionary, because of the way they built the trait, and they like every Visionary can carry for the most part. They're all quite good. And now there's just like more Visionary comps than ever before. It's largely because 6 Visionary is overtuned. So it just makes sense. And the Visionary emblem is good as well. So this is justified, I think. Are you ever adding the Vlad hero augment on TFT Academy? Well, I will tell you where to find it, but as you know, that is a bannable offense. I am offended that you even asked. Are you ever going to add the Vlad hero augments? Not only is it right here, if you just look at the situational tier, but if you search the augment, it says search anything here. If you just search up Vladimir, it comes up here. If you search Crimson Pact, it comes up here, and we highlight it for you. I'm offended that you even asked, sir.
One more change to talk about here, and this is probably the biggest change of the patch that we should talk about.
It did it.
Is Chem Baron. So Chem Baron, what we found out here that we ended up not being happy with is that we like it when players are able to play the high risk traits. We want you to like go, ooh, it's a Chem Baron game. This is fun. But what that really required right now is like, you have to high roll 2 out of 3 conditions. You need like the Rennie and the Smeech early, or the emblem early. And even if you get the Rennie and the Smeech early, you still need the emblem later. It was just really hard to play. It required a really, really high roll to happen. And then when it did happen, it was like insane. But if it didn't happen, it was garbage. So we're taking away the emblem. That's the big thing here. The emblem is just gone.
Wow.
There's no such thing as a Chem Baron emblem. Now, this does have some domino effects. For example, if you have Calling Card and you put a Singed on it, you're guaranteed a Sentinel emblem.
Oh.
So Calling Card with Chem Barons can do some cool stuff. But in addition, this should now be like, hey, I got a single Rennie out of a box. I might have a chance to play this. So this should feel pretty good. Generally, the goal here is, again, easier to play, but still, if you want to cap it out, you're going to need like the Silco early or the Savika on 4-2 to really hit those high points. So, you know, that's kind of the change here. And you'll notice some of the win streak values have also gone down. So it's going to be harder to get those up. But basically here you can see the 3-piece, pretty similar. 4-piece, less from win streak, same otherwise. 5-piece, more from loss streak and a little less health. 6-piece, less from win, more from loss, and a little less health. Now, the other thing to note here is that in double up, Chem Baron's pretty easy to play. You can actually just like win streak Chem Baron and get away with it. So double up is going to get Shimmer pretty nerfed here. You can see the values listed here, but they are less than the standard values. So double up Chem Baron getting a pretty big nerf. And then finally, another balance pass on the items here. So Perfected Piltover Hex Armor ended up a little too weak, so 1 less second on its cooldown. Perfected Unleash Toxins, as I promised, no longer stuns and fires a few less missiles. And Perfected Virulent Virus does 10% less true damage. So again, hopefully the hope here is all the perfected items are about the same quality now. But overall, from what I tested playing this, it's, like I said, it's more possible to play Chem Baron. And if you high roll like a Silco early or a Savika early, it's very fun. Otherwise, it's not. But yeah, give it a try. Let us know what you think. Again, goal is easier to play, harder to max out. If we didn't do that, we messed up.
Does anyone think like this makes it easier to play? This makes me feel like it's less likely to be played. I feel like nothing changed about 3, and 4 got worse. So if you have 4 Chem Baron, you get less for winning. That's it. And so now it's like you have to high roll Silco. There's no Chem Baron emblem. And so like, how are you supposed to act? So it's like you have to high roll Silco in stage 3. Otherwise, you're just playing 3-4 Chem Baron the entire time. So I feel like this makes it harder to play. As in like harder to get a spot to play it. And it also feels like it means that you have to hit Silco on stage 3. Otherwise, you're not going to get the high break points. And then as sort of like the cherry on top, they nerf some of the perfected items. This is a huge nerf. Perfected Unleashed Toxins no longer stuns. I mean, first of all, there's no Exodia with Kog'Maw anymore, so that's good, but because that's honestly BS. But now it's like, well, I don't know what it's like to play Unleashed Toxins without it. It might actually not even be good. There's a possibility that ends up being kind of an underpowered perfected item. And so the risk that you take versus the payoff is lower now. They did buff the perfected Piltover and Hex Armor, though, so I'm not sure. Either way, the changes to here make me think that it's actually going to be harder to play Chem Baron. But I guess like easier, he's saying it's easier to play if you are in that line. I think that the line feels harder to me just overall. So I'm not sure, but we'll see. I do think it's a bold swing to remove 7 and remove the emblem, because I do think the emblem being as spiky as it is problematic, because you guys have played a lot of Chem Baron games or against Chem Baron games where you just know the game is over because they hit too many Chem Barons early and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Even if they beat you, you just know that they're guaranteed, right? Because they can just win 1 or 2 more and then that's fine. So I do appreciate the swing. I just don't. This doesn't make me feel like it's easy to play. So we'll see.
A couple small traits here. 9 Conqueror, just a little too weak, hilariously enough. It's only a 1.8 or something. So it's going to get more initial AD and AP.
Okay.
And then Scrap 9, a little too good. So it's just going to lose a little bit of its shield
Just 9
per
scrap?
item here. So for those of you wanting a Scrap nerf, maybe this isn't what you had in mind. But
if you guys have actually played 9 Conqueror, you would know that 9 Conqueror needs like 1 or 2 turns to actually ramp up because you need the actual conquest up. So I actually do think 9 Conqueror needs to get buffed because it is one of those traits that you work really hard to get to, but a lot of times you are at like 1 or 2 lives and you need a little bit more time than that. And 9 Scrap is very OP, but Scrap's OP in general, so I'm curious what they're going to nerf about Scrap.
But there you go. All right, on the champion side, Draven. Draven reroll, not really a thing. Nobody's really playing Draven 3, and when they are, they're not having much success. So Draven 3 and 4, buffed. A little bit. Just a little bit. Steb,
Okay.
probably the best opener. Really, really good, especially at 2-star.
Yep.
If you have a 2-star Steb, he's kind of dominating stage 2, a little more than we're comfortable with. So the world's tiniest nerf here to 1-star, 20 less heal on the 2-star, very tiny. But 4-star, not that there's a lot of 4-star Stebs running around, but if you play him, we'll heal for 20 more. Cool.
20 more.
Urgot. Okay. I
Okay.
owe you an apology. I was wrong about Urgot. I thought Urgot was a noob stomper. Turns out he's stomping noobs and pros and EU and KR and a lot of people.
Good.
That's
good,
my bad.
Good.
I was wrong. So we're nerfing Urgot again, very lightly here. It's mostly just at 3-star. He's just going to do a little less spell damage. Again, not big swings here, but Urgot's still very, very good after the last patch. And just a little too good for where he's at. Cassiopeia. This champion has not really had her chance to be in the spotlight at all this set.
Wow.
Part of this is the pace of combat. She requires like multiple casts to do her miasma part of her spell, which is a little too slow.
Miasma?
Part of it, she's a dominator. Like her trait's just not in a good spot here. So Cassio's getting one of the bigger buffs. That being said, it's not a very large buff. It's just a small spell damage buff and small miasma buff. If we need to do more, we will. Again, we don't want to swing too hard right now in a balanced state and have it be a Cassiopeia forcing meta. That's not the thing we want. But Cassiopeia gets a big buff.
All right. Taking a look at these are the only 1, 2, and 3 costs being changed. Oh wow, that's it. So Draven 3 is getting a buff. I guess it buffs family. Buffs worth the ways. Not really anything else. This feels like a non-change to me, unless I'm missing something, and all of a sudden this makes family Draven much more insane. But I don't think that's the case. Steb, he's correct. Steb is actually such a really good opener. Is basically single-handedly what's carrying a lot of the enforcers because of how stable Steb 2 is early, and a lot of people hold Stebs. Urgot, I'm glad that he walked it back. Listen, it takes humility to be able to say I was wrong and walk it back. We've seen many people double, triple down and say, look, even if that statement was incorrect, here's like what I meant by it. But I think it's good that he admit that he was wrong about it because Urgot was very good. It was more than just a noob stomper. It was performing so well at tournament level. And part of it is because the ceiling of Urgot's really high. If you get things like artifacts, rating items, really good augments for it. It's because outside of those, it might be one of those things where like maybe now you don't play Urgot unless you have the optimal conditions, very similar to Nocturne. It could be like Urgot and Nocturne are very similar now. That's probably fine because Urgot was just way too good and reliable, even without it. So I think this is a justified nerf. It is he says it's a small nerf. I do think it's actually kind of a big deal though, because part of the reason why we take tank anomalies on Urgot is because he does so much damage already that you could afford to. And so now maybe it's one of those things where if you take a tank anomaly, you might not have as much damage to get past some insane front lines. Because I'm thinking about some other stuff, right? If they're buffing 15% HP on Rebels, they're nerfing 20% on Urgot's damage from this. It just moves the needle. So now, what if Urgot can't kill Alawi 2 quickly enough? And now it becomes one of these things where Urgot might get stat checked by one of the most commonly played front lines, which is Alawi. So it could completely swing the opposite direction. Cassiopeia, I mean, this unit just has not been good. If she ends up becoming kind of OP, it's sort of like fine in the sense that Dominators have not been very good except for that one patch, and Cassio has not been very good except for the very beginning. But the very beginning of the set was like fake because Black Rose was just OP. So I think this is fine. It does make blue buff a lot better of a slam as well. So now you can go blue buff into Visionaries, Heimer. You can also blue buff into Cassio, which is good. It actually increases a lot more item path ability, which is what you want to see.
All right, 4 costs. This is where a lot of work is. Ambessa. This looks like a lot. It's not. Ambessa gets 3 more AD.
23-star.
Cool. Ambessa needs a small buff. Great. And then we're buffing 3-star Ambessa because 3-star Ambessa was underperforming a bit. So 3-star Ambessa, all of her stuff hits harder. Cool. That's it.
Okay.
So 3 AD, 3-star better. Neat. Mundo. Mundo's in a weird spot right now. Bruiser Mundo, good. Pretty hard to kill, in fact. Really, really hard to kill. Anything other than Bruiser Mundo, not very good. So we're trying to shift this without buffing Bruiser Mundo. So base Mundo is going to get 6 more armor and MR. That should make him tankier by default. Should be good. If you want to play Dominator Mundo or you want to play Experiment Mundo, it should be a bit better. But we're lowering the spell heal HP percent to compensate for that. So Bruiser Mundo will be a little less heal, but I mean, he still gets the 6 armor and MR. So overall, this should feel like a buff to non-Bruiser and a slight neutral to Bruiser Mundo. So Echo. After the last buff, finally became the playable champion that we knew he could be. I think he's the best 4 cost in the game by a pretty significant margin, doing tons and tons of damage, high survivability. Echo's kind of pushed Scrap and Ambusher into a really high spot. Echo is going to get his 5% nerf. So his base spell damage goes down 5%, and the secondary damage goes down a little as well. So small nerf, but he needs it.
Okay.
Elise, same thing. Frontline Elise. This should say frontline, by the way. This is only frontline. But frontline Elise, 10 more mana to cast. She'll still be able to get that first cast just as quick. Second cast will be a little bit harder.
Okay.
Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger and Silco right now are kind of underperforming. Again, I know I'm talking about it a lot, but part of this is the pace of combat. They both require a lot of ramp up. Silco, we debated buffing, but the combination of the Chem Baron and the Dominator was like, let's not go crazy here. So Silco might have to wait another patch. Plus, with everything, the damage coming down, hopefully he ends up a little better. Heimerdinger, on the other hand, we felt like we could get away with this, especially with the Visionary nerf. So he's going to get a tiny, tiny buff here. It is the most microscopic buff we could give him, but Heimerdinger will be able to do a little bit more. So.
All right, so let's start at the very top. Ambessa's AD, this is just justified. Ambessa is largely perceived to be the weakest 4-cost carry. Part of it was because I thought that her traits were too good, as in, like, it's kind of scary to give her too much because she's an emissary, so she's flexible. She's a conqueror, so if you high roll her early and you have conqueror, like, it compounds too much. I thought she was intentionally weak. So the 3 AD buff is not irrelevant whatsoever. It's not even a small buff, it's a medium buff, because 5 AD is a very large buff. So 3 AD, it's because remember, this AD scales off of star level, right? So you're thinking 3 AD, but if you get her to Ambessa 2, she's going to hit a lot harder now. And that scales off the items. So the base AD scaling off the items, scaling off the upgrades, it all kind of works really nicely off each other. So Ambessa 2 should be a lot better now. And they're buffing 4 Emissary, don't forget. So if they're buffing 4 Emissary, Ambessa 2, you know, maybe Ambessa is going to be a much more common carry now. We'll see. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know how to read this Mundo change, because last time Mort said that he adjusted Mundo, I think he said, like, we're making Mundo better outside of Dominators, and we're making him better in Experiments. I think it ended up flip. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I don't think it worked out that way. Do you guys remember, like, they did like an adjustment on Mundo similar to this, where they buffed aspects of him and nerfed aspects of him? And I remember they said that this should make Mundo better in certain comps that he's not being played in versus others. I think they wanted to make Bruiser Mundo worse, and then, like, Experiment and Dominator Mundo better. And I don't remember if that actually changed that much. So this one's kind of, like, weird. I don't know. Like, it should make Mundo, in my opinion, a little bit better, because I think base resistances is actually quite good, because you can always stack a bunch of HP in other ways. But I'm not entirely sure. It's the same thing as last time. More AP scaling. Okay. They buffed his base heal, but nerfed his HP. All right, so we're just basically moving the sliders up and down. I understand that they don't want to make Mundo feel too good because when Mundo was hard to kill, he had just way too much HP. So we'll see. I don't know. I guess I'm like undecided on this. Echo nerf completely justified. This guy's way too good. And remember, he's a crit scaling champion, so it might feel like, okay, well, they're nerfing his damage here, but it only looks like a little bit. But all that multiplied off of base stats with crit, which was just getting way too out of control. And remember that he's also getting to the back line because sometimes you have him in Firelight. And so if he's ever casting on back line, they are cooked. Echo was way too good. But it was cool. I actually, believe it or not, I kind of liked when Echo was good. He feels like a very good 4-cost to play around. I think he's a cool champion. He's a big part of Arcane, which apparently is something that's a little bit off about the set, I would say, overall about set 13, is that it feels like it's supposed to be an Arcane set, and yet I feel like the set's been all about non-Arcane characters. Except for Smeech. Love that guy. Heimerdinger doesn't actually need a buff, in my opinion. I think, believe it or not, I'm pretty sure this actually is an unnecessary buff because Heimer is more playable than people think it is. If you look at some of the builds that's emerged lately, Heimer actually does a decent amount. So this actually might make Heimerdinger, in my opinion, probably the best 4-cost to play around. But we'll see. Because like I think the reason why I say that is because I think Visionaries in general were really good, and anytime anybody who played a lot of 6 Visionary would know that Heimer's actually quite good in those setups. But people just didn't really know how to play it very often. Plus, he's still not that popular. So I think that Heimer's probably going to be one of the main carries. And with Cassio being better next patch, it just may be one of those things where a lot of people slam blue buff and play between Cassio and Heimerdinger, which is cool, I guess. You know, having blue buff flex has not really been a thing this entire set. As in, you slam blue buff and you have options, and there are even units that can hold blue buff on the other side. You could always, if you find a way to get into like Twitch Caitlyn, you could always like have blue buff go on Caitlyn. So it's not like you have 0 options on the other side either. So I would like to see a little bit more things open up based off of that. It's pretty sad that there's no Academy item changes for the entire set. Oh, actually, that's a good point. Never thought about that. But then again, I don't really. I guess I'm not like. I'm not thinking like, man. I hope there's more Academy combos. It's not something I'm thinking about either.
Cool. On the small side, both Garen 3 and Twitch 3 underperforming. So Garen 3 is going to hit harder. Cool. And Twitch 3 is going to hit harder and fall off less. Cool. So if you ever hit Twitch 3 and Garen 3,
okay, 3-star
hopefully they won't be disappointing.
Great.
All right, Caitlyn.
Man, I don't need to say this, right? 3-star 4-cost. Some of these are kind of bad, so it's good.
Is doing a lot of damage and propping up Enforcer on her back. Very light nerf here. 82 to 80 AD. 80 also just looks better anyway, so tiny nerf to Caitlyn. And then LeBlanc, same thing. She's kind of got Sorcerer on her back. Sometimes LeBlanc 1 does more than Zoe 2. That being said, not big shifts. So tiny nerf to her empowered autos. That's it.
I mean, these are 5 costs to help capstone a lot of their compositions. LeBlanc is very strong. I think most people know that LeBlanc 1 is not better than Zoe 2. She's better than like every AP carry. A lot of times you hit LeBlanc 1, you transfer items immediately. So this makes a lot of sense. Caitlyn, I mean, sure. The one thing that I kind of wish they did with Caitlyn was made her more playable outside of Enforcers and a Twitch duo, but I guess there's not many other ways you can kind of like it feels like you can't really primary Caitlyn ever. But I guess based off her kit, she'll never primary carry because she's supposed to be AoE and like a target sniper as opposed to like consistent sort of DPS. So I guess it's fine. It just makes it so that the capstone of this, it makes Caitlyn 2 less oppressive. This, yeah, I guess there's just a little bit less damage. It's fine. Also, as someone's mentioned, I feel like Rumble needs a nerf. I'm actually surprised that Rumble has been allowed to go as untouched as he is. That guy is still, he has been the best 5-cost in the game for the entire set. And he still is the best 5-cost in the set. And he still will be the best 5-cost in the set. I feel like either they tune down his base numbers that you have to upgrade him, or they make the upgrades less impactful and then maybe make him cheaper or something like that. But either way, Rumble is like, I think he's a huge part of what makes Scrap so insane. As well as like he caps so many boards. He's like way too good and way too flexible.
So tiny nerf to Caitlyn. And then LeBlanc, same thing. She's kind of got Sorcerer on her back. Sometimes LeBlanc 1 does more than Zoe 2. That being said, not big shifts. So tiny nerf to her.
Oh, more things you want to
autos.
nerf him? Just next
That's
patch?
it.
Okay.
Cool. 6 cost. So this is probably the most controversial change of the patch if you're a challenger player with strong opinions. We are not nerfing any of the 6 costs yet. We're going to keep an eye on them. Right now, we do think the opinions on 6 costs are a little hyperbolic. Remember, they're supposed to be equal to a 2-star 4 cost. So if you look at the situation you're in and replace them with a 2-star 4 cost, usually we're actually seeing, like, for the most part, it's like barely an upgrade, if at all. Especially with Victor. It's funny, Victor kept his 2-second stun, and he's still not actually that amazing. So Victor is going to get a little bit more damage here, so that it's worth itemizing. So again, no nerfs to Mel, no nerfs to Warwick, and a buff to Victor. But again, hold us to this. If we're wrong, next patch we'll nerf him. But I'm going to be looking at a lot of fights and going, if you replace this with a 2-star 4 cost that they want, is it better or worse? That'll be the bar we hold them to. So
probably worse. It's probably worse because the board wide stun is still really impactful. You can't just measure off the damage. But I will say that 2 things. One, Victor still doesn't feel that good with items, so I actually kind of agree that, like, if you were to hold Victor to the same standard as Warwick and Mel, then yes, Victor probably needs a buff. But the question is, and I think everyone knows this, should we be holding Victor to the standard of where the 6 costs are, or should Warwick and Mel be brought down to where Victor is? So it feels like we might be asking the wrong premise here of, do we want the 6 costs in the right are we asking for 6 costs to be in the correct territory? And I think that it should be the inverse. I think Warwick and Mel should be brought down a touch or 2. Second thing I want to say is rest in peace, K3 Soju subs, because I'm pretty sure that guy promised to not stream set 13 anymore if they don't nerf Warwick. So if you guys were trying to extend your 27-month streak, it might be some dry of content. But don't worry, twitch.tv/Frodan. We stream pretty much every day. I take like 2 days off a month max. So I guess I'll be seeing you.
All right, items. I already mentioned Chem Baron item removed. Great. Gold Collector, a little too good early. It's also propping up some of the augments it comes from. So Gold Collector is going to get a little bit less gold. On the opposite end, Mogul's Mail, a little weak, unfortunately. So it's going to get 50 more base health.
Oh, that's
should
pretty
make
good.
It early. Make it good early.
That's very good early.
And then here's a silly change, but honestly, it fixes a lot of bugs for us. Blue buff and Nashers can now be equipped on monolith champions.
Oh.
So if you want to put a blue buff Nashers on your Amumu, you go right ahead. You're allowed to do that. Not saying you should, but you can. And again, this is mostly fixing a lot of bugs where they would pop off in situations where they shouldn't. A really bad example is like you take a blue buff Amumu off carousel with Pandora's. The blue buff instantly pops up and then transforms. That won't happen anymore. Plus, now there's just no such thing as items that can't get put on champions. It makes the system pretty elegant. It's just you can put items on champions. Should you? Probably not, but you can.
So there was actually like fun tricks that I would do when I was playing. When you're playing things like Slammin', you can actually equip certain items, and you get a free remover by doing tricks like that. So you could put like a tier on a Mumu, and if you need a blue buff, you could like put the blue buff on the Mumu, and then it pops off. So there's like fun tricks like that, but I guess he's right, as in there's probably like a lot of prop systems, and there might be some actual bug abuses or really bad things that happen from it. So it's probably correct. Gold Collector nerf, very justified. This item is so much better than Mogul's Mail. It's not even funny, but now Mogul's Mail got a lot better. That 50 HP does matter a lot, because if you stack an item with that and you're able to get multiple gold with it, Mogul's Mail might be more desirable. Plus, there are some champions that are really good with Mogul's Mail because of how hard they are to kill early. You're thinking like an early Swain, for example. Step 2 on the current patch, things like that. Mogul's Mail actually could be quite good. So we'll see. I actually want to take Mogul's Mail a little bit more often. Plus, Mogul's Mail still sucks late game. Like this doesn't change the fact that Mogul's Mail is awful late game. And more often than not, you reforge this in like stage 5.
All right, augments. Aurelia Carry Augment, underperforming a little bit, mostly buffed at 1 and 2 star, tiny buffs at 3 and 4 star. If you want to try that, cool. Okay, this one I think is a big buff, so don't sleep on this one. Diversified portfolio. Right now it was 1 gold per 3 traits. So if you had 3 traits, you would get 1 gold, 6 traits, 2 gold, 9 traits, 3 gold. Pretty hard to get more than 2 gold. Now it's 2 per 4. So it's a little harder to activate, but at 4 traits, you're going to get 2. But if you have 8 traits active for a silver, you're going to get 4 gold a turn.
Wow.
That's going to be pretty good. So
That's
don't sleep
pretty
on this
big.
augment. I think it's going to be pretty good now. If you can
Holy
get to that
cow.
8 traits. Pairs really well with Bronze for Life if you want. So, yep. I for an I+, just slowing down how quickly you get your component a little bit. It's overperforming a tiny bit.
Good.
Singed Carry, buffing that. He's going to get more Omnivamp. Mentorship 1, a really, really good silver. It's going to get 30 less health. That should be a pretty good nerf to put it down to the other combat silvers. Survivor, as I promised, if it was still not where we wanted it in the stats, we would buff it again. The good news is it was close. It's very, very close, and it's about what you'd expect. Survivor has a very low top 4 rate, but a decent win rate. It's just not quite the win rate we'd want for the trade-off of the low top 4 rate, so 4 more gold. So we're hoping this will be the last buff to Survivor, 92 gold, because we don't want it to end up at like some 18% win rate augment. That's not the goal. But Survivor, more gold.
IQ.
And then finally, Table Scraps. This is an augment that we had tried to launch at the start of the set, and then it was way too powerful because it used to say you get an item off every carousel. We had to disable it for loc lock to change with the text, but then we forgot to re-enable it, so now it is re-enabled. So what this does, by the way, if you don't know, this augment says at the end of the next 3 carousels, get one of the leftovers. So you'll basically get +3 components for a silver augment and the 3 champions that come with them. So not too bad.
Okay, a lot to break down here. Actually, not that much to break down. Blade Dance, believe it or not, does not get buffed. This is an augment that's already pretty decent, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that crazy of a buff. It's like the 3-star really is what really matters, and they're buffing it by like 5% at 345 to 350. So it's actually not that big of a deal. If you guys don't know, this open eye, I think Blade Dance Irelia is already pretty solid. I mean, she's not as good as like the others, but she's still pretty solid. Part of it was itemization. People weren't itemizing her correctly. This is a pretty interesting buff. This makes certain traits really good. Like, remember how you guys play emissaries, and emissaries can be really tricky because of how much gold you have, but you can now play like emissary flex, like they buff 4 emissaries, and now you can splash in a bunch of trades. You can activate it, and now you get 4 gold a turn, which could be really big to help hit your expensive ass board. So this could be really good. This also buffs a bunch of like Twitch flex boards, things like that. They're just expensive boards. So if you get 2 gold per round for a silver, it's generally very good. And then if you get to 8, it's insane. So we'll see. But for a silver augment, getting 2 gold per turn is quite a lot. If you think about it, like this is basically where gold power level is, right? If you look at an augment like Slammin', for Slammin' to get where's Slammin'? To get Slammin' value, Slammin' is gain 1 random component after each player combat. If there's no items on your bench, gain 2 EXP. So Diversified Portfolio says like it's like a gold tier level of econ, and all you have to do is activate 4 traits. I mean, come on, man, it's like a lot. That's a lot. So this probably ends up being like an insane augment now for silver. Mad Chemist is actually underperforming. I agree. I think we could buff it. I don't know if buffing the Omnivamp helps a lot, but maybe that's enough. I didn't even know Mentorship 1 was broken. I don't have augment stats, so apparently between now and the next patch, I'm clicking Mentorship 1 whenever I have an application of it. Okay, Survivor getting buffed to 92 gold. We're almost there. We're almost at 100. So I'm going to need you guys. Okay, I'm going to need everyone to do a favor here. We need to pitch in together. We all have to collectively agree to click Survivor and go 8th. We just have to, because if they do that, he promised to buff it again. But I'm not going to do that. You guys will do that. Actually, I have chat vote for my first augment on my climb. I picked Survivor and I went first. I'm not helping. I picked Survivor and I went first in that lobby. So, but you guys, if we all collectively choose to do it together, they will buff Survivor and we can finally get it to 100 gold. That's the goal. More promised. And then Table Scraps. I don't know how to evaluate this. It sounds decent. Like 3 components over the next couple stages is probably pretty good. Because you get on 2, 3, and 4. You also get a little bit of gold. It's like the teaming up 1 silver where you get like 3 costs and a component. It's kind of like that, except you get it like delayed, but you get more components. It's probably pretty decent. 3 components is just like a lot for a silver, so it's pretty good. Add to the cause. We'll see. I'm playing in EU
Hopefully
later
it's a
today,
fun
so.
augment. All right, on the gold side, Chem Baron Crest. We already talked about this. Gone. Glass Cannon 2, still underperforming, 5% more damage amp. Moonlight, still underperforming. This is a big buff, 10% more AD and AP. Cool. Martial Law, this is overperforming, but we also don't like, there's the Caitlyn nerf and the Enforcer slight nerf. We don't want to go too hard.
Best of
so
buff.
Caitlyn's just going to do a little less damage here. Reunion, also a little too strong. Vi's very good now. So just 10% less damage on the Vi punches. Sisters, still really underperforming. So the Jinx attack speed duration is going to last longer, and Vi will get more AD.
Okay.
Training Arc for Pit Fighter. This was to make their augment a little bit better. 5 more HP per win. Trifecta, a combat augment, not really performing where we want. 5% more attack speed. And then why not both? If you want to play Form Swapper, enjoy your 6 more armor, MR, AD, and AP. So
that's not bad. I was not aware that Glass Cannon was pretty weak. I thought it was pretty good in certain comps that really want to burst high, like Sorcerers, for example, even Visionaries. It basically amplifies their healing as well. So I wasn't under the impression that Glass Cannon was weak, but now it might turn into like a pretty strong one. Maybe even in comps that aren't even trying to look for it. Maybe people. It could be one of those things where Glass Cannon got buffed, so now people overpick it, but it is very good in the comps that really want it. Moonlight is interesting. Maybe some of the reroll comps. Maybe that's where like Morgana and I don't know. Maybe Family comes back. Who knows? Martial Law, they buffed, and Bessa, they nerfed Caitlyn a little bit. They're nerfing this. It's fine. It's overperforming. These all make sense. These are all overperforming traits. Sisters average is a straight 5, I think. Last time I checked. Traits is Sisters average. It just averages a straight 5. It is abysmal. Nobody's out here trying to play Sisters. Very, very embarrassing performance every time I've taken it. And then, like, the best part about Sisters is that if you need the Jinx, you get the Jinx. And then Training Arc, that makes sense. Trifecta is fine, I guess. And then why not both? I mean, this is actually kind of a cool augment, but no one plays it.
And then Prismatic.
You know, the problem with why not both isn't the stats. It's actually because you can't hit Gangplank and Swain in the current meta. The reason why this augment sucks is because everyone's playing Sorks and Scrap. So it's just really hard to actually hit. That's not because the augment sucks. So the moment if those comps become less popular, this might become quite good. But yeah.
Prismatic feels like where we can do some of the most good. That being said, it's not that bad off, but anger issues, really, really close. We finally got it to really, really close. The AD and AP really helped. 5 less armor and MR, though, should get it right where we want it.
Okay.
Belt Overflow. We're going to change this one to be 5 belts instead of 4. So this is a buff. But obviously, we can't just give you a whole other belt. That would be too big a buff. So instead of 90 health, it's 60 health. This is meant to be a buff overall. An extra belt means another item. So many belts. It now matches the other 2 as well, which is good. Chem Baron Crown removed, obviously. Exalted Adventure still overperforming a little bit. So now you only get 2 duplicators instead of 3, and the rewards were reduced by about 10%. Glorious Evolution. This will be an interesting one. This is the Victor augment. If you get it on 4-2, it required you to upgrade 9 units. Upgrading 9's a lot. It was pretty hard to do. We went with a big swing here to make you kind of excited to take this. Now it only requires 6. If you're willing to take 6, combine this with the Victor buff. We're hoping this actually leads to some cool Victor moments where he can get an anomaly.
Very cool.
But consider that an option, and hopefully that becomes a little bit better. Immovable Object. This is a really good combat one. I know very popular in higher elo. It's going to only be 50% more effective instead of 60%, so less armor and MR from that. Lucky Gloves. This is the one you take at 2-1. You're not going to get your third glove till 3-2 now instead of 2-7. Pumping up 3, start a little bit stronger, so you won't be in quite a bad a state. Spoils of War 3. This is one that isn't performing where we'd like, so pretty decent buff here. 5% more chance for loot orbs. Geniuses. Geniuses got a bug fix, which we'll talk about later, but even with the bug fix, it still needed a small buff, so Heimer missiles go up. And Trifecta is another one. Don't sleep on this one. Another 9% attack speed for Trifecta, so hopefully that opens up some cool Trifecta lines.
All right, so 3-cost reroll back on the menu if you hit Trifecta. They're like buffing it a lot. They're buffing Cassio. Don't forget Cassio really likes attack speed, so maybe there's something there. Anger issues nerf, very justified. Everyone knows by now anger issues is pretty problematic in some of the comps that's good in. And actually is just overall actually not even a bad augment for some comps. Like I've seen people play anger issues Twitch, just experiment Twitch, do totally fine. Top 3. Belt overflow. I didn't even realize that it gave fewer belts than the others, so I think that just makes sense. Exalted Adventure, this is a pretty big nerf. Being off on the duplicator just makes it less likely to hit, and the rewards nerf. So, I mean, this augment in general has been extremely good for a while. Like, I still have yet to ever play Exalted Adventure and like not top 2, ever since they buffed it for that first time. And then they've nerfed it ever since. It's just an insane augment in terms of the rewards that you get. It turns out just getting spiked of like things like prismatic rewards and whatnot is really insane. Glorious Evolution. I mean, I don't know what to think about this. Getting an early Victor and putting an anomaly on it. I guess they just really want Victor to shine because he's a big part of Arcane. So yeah, I don't even know what a good anomaly on Victor is. Ever since they took out Cosmic Anomaly, that was like the easy one. Is there any good anomalies on Victor? What do we have on TFT Academy for good Victor anomalies? Let me see. We've never suggested it, so what did we write down for Victor? We wrote comeback story. Yeah, no idea. We just picked something generic because we just don't even know. Like who knows? If movable object, justified nerf, lucky gloves. This is a 2-1 justified nerf. It's actually pretty good, and these are all buffs that make sense. Although I would say actually Geniuses, I actually think Geniuses, believe it or not, is pretty decent, but people don't know how to play it. If you look at the stats, Geniuses averages a 4.7, but if you actually just play Geniuses in 6 Sentinel, it averages it pretty good. I just don't think people play it correctly because you basically play Echo Heimer as a duo in that comp, and then you have Heimer cast a lot. It's actually pretty decent, but it's a very, very, very rare situation that you end up in.
So Heimer missiles go up, and Trifecta is another one. Don't sleep on this one. Another 9% attack speed for Trifecta. So hopefully that opens up some cool Trifecta lines. On the Anomaly side, bringing the top down here, and it might surprise you. I think ones people were expecting are getting nerfed, but also ones people maybe haven't realized are good yet. Center of the Universe, we finally got people playing it. I'm glad they realized how good it was finally. Felt like one of those cases where we had to buff something to get you to try it, and then you tried it, and cool. So now 5 less damage on it. No big deal. Diving in, very, very good. Good on people like Echo, Smeech, stuff like that. A little less Omnivamp. Infectious Anomaly. This one's interesting. I think this one has a really bad rap. In our data, it looks fine, like a little good. It's very, very popular, though. It has become kind of the catch-all. I think this is like a really interesting design because it's like you can just take it no matter what your board is and you feel okay about it. Definitely some people take it in spots they shouldn't, like Sorcerer comps, for example. But overall, it's not too bad. We're giving it the world's lightest nerf here. Only 3% less starting AD and AP. It still scales just as much as it did before. But not a big nerf here. So if you're a big fan of this one, keep playing it. But it's probably not going to get nerfed from here. So Last Chance. This one's really good in the extreme cases. Things like your Urgot 3 with Last Chance. So less bonus attack speed once you proc it. Titan of Teamwork, on the other hand, one of our new ones, did not perform as well.
Yeah.
Giving it a buff here from 4 to 6 stars for every 3 star you have. If there's a cool reroll defensive line, you can try it. Still seems a little weak. Touch of Frost, the buff we gave it last time didn't really move the needle too much. So now the stun duration is going to go up to 1.5 seconds. We almost put it at 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
But the idea of this being meta and everyone getting free 2-second stuns when they stun people or kill people seemed really dangerous and frustrating. So we're going to go with 1.5 for now. Yep. Vampiric Affinity. If you have something that's doing a lot of damage and want 50% Omnivamp, this is the anomaly for you. 50% Omnivamp seems insane. Then again, Exiles on 4.5 is 80%, so what do I know? And then lastly, this is the anomaly that when I checked the data was like, holy, this... Because obviously you only take this from a winning position, and when you're winning from a winning position, you're more likely to win. Pikachu Shock, I know. That being said, when you win with it, you win hard with it. This thing can get like 30 or like 15 stacks, and it can go pretty wild. So it is getting nerfed here. So hopefully this makes it a little more fair and not just like the world's biggest snowball anomaly. So
Cool. Center of the Universe. I mean, that one nerf is justified. It's very common. It's very good generic fallback one that a lot of people take. And people were actually forcing it surprisingly a lot. Like they would roll for Infectious or Center of the Universe, and because they added more bad luck protection, you could get it pretty consistently. So this feels correct. I didn't realize diving in was that good, but I think part of it is because Echo was really good and people would get like diving in on Echo. But I mean, it is a very good anomaly in general for melee carries. Same thing with Last Chance. 10 of teamwork. I didn't realize it was not that good until I did the math on it a couple days into the patch. I picked it like twice, and Keenan was like, "It's not very good. You should look at the numbers." And I looked at it, and I had multiple 3 stars, and I had something stupid like 18 DR. I was like, "This does not seem very good." So they're buffing it a lot. Maybe ends up being a lot better in Family. I think it's probably really good in Renata Visionary role, especially because you really want the DR with the resistances. Touch of Frost, that's a lot of stun time, so I'll definitely click it some. And I've never actually seen Voracious Appetite. I've heard it was really good, but I've never actually seen it in game. I actually thought it wasn't patched in because I've yet to see it myself, either at going up against it or playing it. And I've watched a lot of TFT. I still haven't seen anyone click Voracious Appetite in a tournament either. So it's kind of rare. I think you have to have a lot of HP for it to be offered. But I would like to play it one time because I heard it's very good, especially since I now know it's very, very good. If you ever see this right now, between now and the end of the patch, you should click it a lot.
and then finally bugs. We try to fix bugs when we can. Training Dummies Inspect panel is now called Training Dummy instead of Target Dummy.
Okay.
Thank you, Kent. Gifting a unit to your partner in double up during the anomaly round will no longer cause the unit to be returned to you at the end of the round.
Wow.
1,000 cuts no longer gains 2 stacks on the first hit against each target.
Oh.
1,000 cuts now works correctly with another anomaly. Moonlight and Greater Moonlight now correctly allow units to combine at the start of the planning phase. 9 Scrap no longer deletes spatulas and frying pans. Killing the dragon using Center of the Universe now correctly drops an item.
Oh,
That
I've
happened
heard
to
about
me
this.
once. Sag. Center of the Universe can no longer kill units through revives. That's another nerf to Center of the Universe. Noxian Guillotine no longer kills units through revives.
Thank goodness.
Cool. Prismatic Flesh Rippers revive and Last Stand should now interact correctly. Quality over quantity no longer stops working in combination with Unstable Treasure Chest or No Scout, No Pivot. Victor can no longer gain infinite AP with the Attack Expert Anomaly. Yep.
Huh?
Item Collector 2
Wait, what?
now correctly gives 20 base health instead of 10, so technically a 10 health buff to that augment. Fixed a bug where Team Up Genius's Echo images were doing less damage than intended. It said 50%, it was only doing 33%. That's been fixed. Scion can no longer update or knock up through Quicksilver. Sending a champion to your partner in double up while you have Team Up Augment no longer lets your partner have the Team Up trait. Fixed a few more cases where Caitlyn could miss and or fizzle parts of her spell, so technically a small buff to Caitlyn. And then Mel now correctly procs in double up if your partner takes damage that would reduce you to 1 health. There you go. We fixed the Mel thing in double up. That was one of the most ass things.
Wow.
So there you go.
If your partner died and you had Mel, but like he wouldn't save you. I didn't know that. That's funny.
I think so far from what I've been playing and looking at the set right now, Automata still feels like one of the things that maybe could have used a little love.
Yeah.
Things like Automata and Kog'Maw. And then from there, we'll keep an eye on things. If Rumble needs a nerf, for example,
Yes.
he's kind of got Scrap in the late game on his back. But again, still a pretty good meta, pretty good set. Overall, though, small adjustments here, trying to shift some things a bit. So there you go. Let us know what you think of the patch. There's only a few more patches left. I think it's like 2 or 3 more. I think 13.7 is Worlds? Or maybe 13.6. I don't know.
13.7.
We're getting close, though. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the set. If not, hopefully you're enjoying the set revival. Oh, before I forget, the set revival. For those of you who are big fans of the set revival, there are changes. There are a lot of changes, in fact.
Yeah, where's
that
the
team
bounce?
worked really hard and has a whole list of changes. I didn't want to do it a disservice, so I'm not going over them here.
Oh.
But they are in the patch notes. There's a whole bunch.
Dude.
Obviously, things like Spirit Teemo nerfs and stuff like
Yes.
that. So definitely check those out. And so if you're a big
Yes.
fan of the set revival, there will be changes there for you to play. Check those out in the patch notes. Yeah. All right. That is it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoy. We keep making TFT.
Thank you, Mort. Good job. Round of applause for Mr. Dog. For saying more. Dude, Spirit's Teemo is averaging in the 2s. And this is like okay, maybe 3.1, but like it's just so crazy strong. Set revival. I played a couple games of it, but you guys saw that like it was Assassin Fest, Spirit Fest, and I still win because I'm better than the lobby. But if I'm playing against better players, it's just kind of toxic. Overall, I think the patch is okay. I think this patch is all right, but not very exciting. I'm not looking forward to playing like that many things. I guess I'm interested in the new Chem Baron. I'm interested in like maybe Cassio and how Dominators do. Maybe see if Emissary Flex is back on the table. I think this is actually one of the more interesting points about balance, like set balance, which is like if the set reaches a point where Riot is a little bit afraid to actually touch many things about the set, does that make the set less exciting because it feels like we're playing too much of the same thing? It almost feels like people just want more balance smashing because they just want to try more things and see more new things about the set. But overall, it feels like this. It feels like, I guess like it depends, right? Because obviously the meta will change. Just like last patch, the meta did change, even though it was like subtle stuff. I hope we get more of that because I feel like the end of the middle parts of these sets start to slow down so much, and it feels like we start off really exciting, but there's like imbalances and bugs and all these crazy power disparities being trades and augments, and then we quickly reach like what should be like equilibrium balance state, but then we stay there for a month and a half, and it feels like even though things feel balanced, it does feel like the game gets stale. And so I feel like there's like this weird thing that Riot needs to figure out here because and I think they admit it. I think they have said that like sets feel 1 month too long. But I'm not saying that we need a fourth set a year. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Either way, I just want something new. Like I don't actually dislike this patch actually. I just want something new. I don't even think the patch is bad. Scrap, in terms of an S tier comp being on top, Scrap's not anywhere near the worst offenders of it. When Nocturne and Chem Baron was ridiculous, I hated that. Way more. When the Black Rose stuff was going on, I hated that. When Family was oppressive, I hated that. Like way more than I hated Scrap. When I say hate, I mean I'm using that as a light word, not a heavy word. So Scrap's like okay, but I just think that I feel like the game could use a little spice, and I'm not entirely sure what that is. And I guess they already introduced 6 cost. I'm not asking them to introduce more 6 costs or anything like that. It just feels like the patch isn't changing much is probably what I'm saying.